Welcome in everyone to the Larsonland podcast. I'm your host, Sawyer Hill, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Dylan Bradshaw. We come in here every single week and talk about all things involving the 2021 NASCAR Cup Series champion, Young Money Kyle Larson. Before we get started with today's show, we would like to take a moment to recognize the passing of sprint car driver Justin Owen. Justin was involved in an incident over the weekend at the Lawrenceburg Speedway in USAC sprint car qualifying. Definitely not the type of news you ever want to hear in the racing community, but all of our thoughts and prayers are with Justin's family and friends at this time. Dylan, we'll get to the mayhem at Bristol, the Bristol Dirt, here in a bit. But before we talk about that, let's back it up a little bit to Thursday night at the Volunteer Speedway, the Kyle Larson Presents Flow Racing Late Model Challenge. What a race it was between Superman and Young Money. Kyle and JD absolutely just put on a crazy race. Another candidate for race of the year. I feel like we've been spoiled this year as race fans. There's been just so many really good races.
Yeah, going back even to Votto, those were some great races we had at Votto in the late model, and then there hasn't been too many late model races here. This is kind of the first one, seems like back that I've watched at least. But yeah, man, just an instant classic, just race of the year in my opinion. Nonstop battle with Larson and JD, just throwing slide jobs lap after lap. It's crazy. It got a ton of coverage. Fox showed it at Bristol. A lot of the clips. He was getting a lot of recognition from it. Larson was on ESPN talking a little bit about it. I think about that. So, just a great race. JD and Larson, just always a battle between those two guys. Two of the best in the late model, and I was hoping to see that at Bristol Dirt kind of transition over, but ultimately they did finish next to each other at least. They did finish right on top of one another. So, but yeah, it was overall a really good race, and I was glad to see him back in the dirt car.
Yeah, it was not only just a good race for Kyle, but I think, or like on the driving side, but on the promotion side, I think it was a good turnout too. Obviously had two other NASCAR drivers there, Kyle Busch and Chase Briscoe, both ending up having to take provisionals to get into the feature again, just like last year with William Byron. But it was a good turnout. When you were watching it on Flow, it kind of, if you look to the infield, it kind of looked like you were watching a race at Lincoln or Williams Grove or Port Royal up in Pennsylvania. The infield was packed. There was people standing all around the inside wall. I was like, there. I don't know if you were watching at the one point, but I think it was. I don't know if it was in a heat race or when it was, but somebody's tire came off and it flew into the infield, and I was like, oh my god! Like everybody's up against the wall, like just right up against it. It was packed. It looked like an awesome turnout for Kyle, and I think we're seeing that event kind of grow and take off here in the second year.
Yeah, going to the promoting side, I think it definitely helped out. It's pretty close to Bristol, I think. I think it's like a 45 or 50-minute drive or so. So, I think with the promotion, he kind of got some guys out that, maybe went to spend the weekend at Bristol, and those people who came along to see what real dirt racing looked like. We got to see that before Bristol Dirt, but yeah, it was a great event, great show. Back to back for Kyle. He got the Richmond win, picked up the late model win there at Volunteer. So, it was a good week. Finally, a bounce back from the bad luck we've been seeing, and then immediately right back over the weekend we go back to our original form. So, but yeah, it was a good one for sure.
Yeah, so last little bit about Volunteer. Third, like you said, third win overall for Kyle this season, second of the year in the late model, both of which coming on 4/10 mile tracks. Really wish that we were going to see Kyle back in the late model this weekend at Volunteer, but the 100,000 to win XR Super Series show on Saturday night. But unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be taking place. Practicing qualifying for NASCAR at Martinsville is late in the day on Saturday. That's kind of going to conflict with that and his ability to get between the two tracks. So, um, just sucks because I think when I looked at that race or when we watched that race on Thursday, there was really nobody else in the realm of what JD and Kyle Larson were. I think if JD's there on Saturday, I don't know who else is going to be able to beat him. I think he runs away with it. What are your thoughts, Dylan?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I would say so. No one was really holding up to him. The lap traffic kind of caught up to him, but they were still just doing their thing, negotiating lap traffic well. Yeah, I don't see anyone holding him. He's just best in the world right now in the late model. I mean, yeah, no one can really hold JT when it comes to that front. But yeah, I mean, exciting racing. I'm glad Volunteer, was back. There was talks of it last year that it might have been shut down and we wouldn't see another late model challenge here. So it's a great track. I hope it's here to stay and put it on some good racing for us.
Absolutely. So good racing on Thursday night. Good start to the racing action at Bristol on Saturday with Kyle Larson. Heat race was awesome. I mean, came started sixth and was in first after the first lap. I mean, didn't I mean I think I saw it coming. Kind of Kyle being able to get by everybody in his heat. He was in a relatively easy heat, but on the first lap, I wasn't expecting that, and then it carried over right into the race. The first 75 laps, the entire first stage, Kyle controlled the race and led and had a decent gap over second place. And from there, I think it just completely just fell off a cliff and went downhill.
Yeah, I mean, it started off pretty good. I mean, Larson, like you said, he was controlling all of stage one. Dylan, I mean, he was kind of surprising me. He was staying up there, kind of following Larson's line and doing what he was doing. He ended up having a really good day, which was surprising to me. But yeah, stage one, then stage two, we had that at the end of stage two, I guess it was the questionable strategy that everyone was talking about, like with the tires and getting fuel only. I don't understand it really. If he would have just stayed out with the guys that stayed out, he would have been leading. If you're gonna stop, then I mean, I guess you might as well take tires when you do stop. He could have made it on fuel, obviously, because everyone else stayed out. But yeah, I'm not too sure on that call. I think he just should have stayed out. Ended up spinning out, sending him in the back, and ruining his day. We're gonna go ahead and get into some of the pre stuff. I'll ask your opinion first, but before I do that, I'm just going to read one quote to everyone listening. So this is directly from Ryan Preece following Coda. All you kids watching wanted to get to this level. Don't do that. Race with respect. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and you can share your thoughts, and then I'll get into mine about the whole Priest situation.
Yeah, I mean, before we get, I mean, I guess I'll talk on the Priest thing first, and then I'll comment on the pit strategy. But um, I I think it's when we talk about dirt track racing in general, we don't typically have spotters out there. And I think that's something that is weird, and it feels super weird when we're watching this race, because every single one of the drivers has a spotter in their ear that normally on dirt you're not going to have that spotter. So the incident between Preece and Larson, the initial incident, if you want to call it that, Kyle just wasn't clear up, and he tried to come up, and there was contact, but was it intentional? No. I mean, there was no intent to what Kyle did. He doesn't. He couldn't see that Priest was even there, and I was listening on the team radio, and I'm not sure what the conversation was between Tyler and Kyle, but it was a racing deal. I don't think it was anything to be as frustrated as what Priest ended up being with it. And then from there, I think it was obvious that Priest was intentionally coming for Kyle. Priest's day went bad after that. A completely rotten day for him. He spun right in front of Larson. I think it was in the beginning of stage two, and that put him to the back of the pack. And then as soon as Kyle got back there with him, it was like, both of our days are ruined, so I'm going to take you out and you're going to be done. And it was obvious. I mean, I, I don't, when we talk about Denny Hamlin, I'm not a big Denny Hamlin fan. I know you're not either. A lot of people aren't. But Denny Hamlin just got penalized for going on his podcast and basically saying, he intentionally wrecked somebody. What's different about that than what Ryan Preece did, going on the radio and basically saying the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, obvious racing it's in the beginning. I mean, I think at the end of the day, these guys, they're racing next gen cars on dirt. These cars aren't made for dirt at all. I mean, they're like what, 600 more pounds than a super late model. Completely different aerodynamics just all across the board. So these guys are just going out there racing these next gens on dirt. It's a whole new ball game. As far as the incident goes, it just not much contact was made. I mean, everyone was sitting there acting like Larson jumped him. I mean, the 41 team on the radio saying game over. It's an eye for an eye that they're going to get their payback. Chad Johnson is actually Bruce's crew chief. He was Larson's former crew chief in the 42. It just seemed like he was kind of hating on the radio towards Larson. I don't know if there's like some bad blood there saying like Larson thinks he's better. Well, I mean, I hate to break it to you, but
He
he's
is.
definitely better. I mean, your guy's struggling to get a top 30 every week. So if you want to talk about that, but I mean, Preece was banging into people. He was banging into Ty Dillon nonstop. And I think the contact from that is why he eventually broke that rear toe link. It wasn't Larson's fault that he ended up in the back of the pack at all. And I just think it's ridiculous. But the precedents and rules NASCAR sets, they're just inconsistent, like you said with Hamlin. You know, I'm not saying he should be penalized. There's always, the boys have at it talk, but when Hamlin did it to Chastain, he got penalized. And just because he said it a day later, I mean, it doesn't change the fact that he did it. And I don't know, man. It's just super inconsistent across the board, and something needs to change. But at the end of the day, that apparently that was the highlight of Priest's season because I don't see him doing anything better than that.
Yeah, it was funny. I think somebody replied to one of our tweets yesterday during the race or like when it happened, and they replied with Preece's stats for the season, zero top five, zero top tens, just like three DNFs, just awful season for Preece. And I think, that's what happens. You got guys that shouldn't be running up front that aren't used to running up front, and they're up there mixing it up with the guys that are actually good. And, that's the results you get when that happens. But as far as NASCAR, the NASCAR side of things goes, from like the penalty perspective, I agree with you. I don't want to see penalties. Like I am so sick and tired over the past 3, 4, 5 weeks, whatever it has been, every single week we get to Monday or Tuesday and it's like, what's the next penalty that's going to come out? Who is going to get penalized for what? I mean, Hendrick just got another penalty for Byron and Bowman. It's out of control. I think what NASCAR refuses to do is just take care of it during the race. They could have easily just held Priest for a lap or done something to penalize him during that race, and it would be fine. But instead, I hope now, because of the precedent being set with Denny Hamlin over the past couple of weeks, what he did. I hope that there's a penalty now for Priest, because Priest just went on the radio and intentionally took Larson out of the race and ended his day. I mean, Kyle obviously ruined his own day spinning out there, but he was still going to be able to fight back for a good finish. I think he was going to salvage a top 20, maybe a top 15 finish at the end of the race. I mean, he was still passing people, and you saw that 41 car right in front of him, and I was thinking, this isn't going to end well. And as soon as he got side by side with him, that was all she wrote.
Yeah, I mean, Preece, he wants to go on and talk about drivers, showing him respect and these guys, wanting respect so much. But I mean, what have you done to gain respect? I mean, you surely wrecking the Cup champion Kyle Larson. I mean, one of the biggest guys in the series. I mean, he didn't even end his day. It was a broken toe link, and I don't think it was
I don't
from the
even think it was
contact with
broken,
Larson.
was it? It was just bent.
I don't know if it was broken or bent, but it was the rear, and he made.
Yeah,
I don't think anything Larson did that. So,
right.
I think it was just completely pointless. Larson said in the video or the interview, it happened like an hour and a half later. I mean, he just wanted him to grow up and kind of get over it. It wasn't a huge deal. It's not like he jumped him and the instant when Priest ran into him, I mean, he ran Larson up on the wall. As soon as he hit the wall, Larson completely broke, came back down, and he just gave him another jam, and his day was done. So. Yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous. At Minigan on the radio, whole 41 team, spotter, crew chief, and Priest, they're just constantly talking about, like I said earlier, eye for an eye. It's game over. I'm getting my revenge. So I think that's, I don't know. I think it's almost more clear than the Hamlin thing. I mean, Hamlin said it in a podcast. If you're talking about it in a
Right.
race that you have clear intent to wreck someone, I mean, it's just ridiculous, dude.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like you said, like, it's just the intent was there. It was obvious. From a perspective of safety, we go back to like the incident last year with Bubba and Kyle, and Bubba intentionally wrecking Kyle. It's like, it's not only just a matter of principle of like showing respect on the track, but like, we don't I think there's not enough consideration out there for the drivers around them. And when you put somebody. I mean, we saw it with like we talked about this on the podcast last week, I think, or a couple weeks ago about the Formula One drivers and drivers from IndyCar and other forms of racing coming to race in NASCAR. The first thing that those guys always have to say is there's just a lack of respect between the drivers out there. Always, that's the first thing they say, and I think. Davenport didn't specifically say that when he was interviewed after the race, but it's kind of like a wake up call when you go out there. It's like guys are just running into you, and in a dirt late model, you're not used to guys just plowing into you, and uh, that's the style of racing. I think NASCAR is as they have put or they want to see put on. I guess because they don't penalize it on the track and they let it just go on.
Yeah, I think I did say it in a podcast a few weeks ago. Harvick was talking about it. I mean, he said the reason these guys do this is because the next gen's a brick. I mean, you can just run into someone and your car is just completely fine. At worst, you might have a broken toe link, which I mean they can swap out pretty fast, it seems like. So there's really no repercussion to just running into a guy, running him over. There's just a lack of respect over on the track. And I mean, guys, the Kyle Busch is one of them saying there's just a lack of respect in the garage. There's just you don't have that, garage etiquette, just respect overall across the board anymore. So I don't know what needs to change, but it's making NASCAR look like a joke, and it's
It
just
is a
not a
joke.
good look. And yeah, I mean, it's just not a good look. And then you have like Bristol Dirt, the people that aren't familiar with dirt racing, they're tuning in, they're thinking that this is what dirt racing is, and it's not
Right.
at all. I mean, you can go to just any local racetrack, any weekday, any weekend, and you'll get a completely different result. You'll get a good dirt race, and that was just not what I like to see. I do think it might have been better in the previous years. We were plagued with rain in previous years. I think the track prep was a little bit better, but I don't know if I'm wrong. I mean, was there even a pass for the lead in the whole 250 laps? I mean, I know during like the pit cycle and guys staying out, I'm not even sure if there was like a clean pass because it seemed like every restart the leader just took a huge jump
Yeah.
and nobody could even come close to catching up.
I think in stage two there was a couple swaps of the lead with I mean Kyle Busch and Austin Dillon and Truex was up there a little bit too. But it was a little bit back and forth there. But I mean, to your point, Kyle led the first 75 laps straight through the first stage, and then the final stage, I think Bell led the final 100 laps. So it wasn't very exciting. I think people that enjoy chaos, they obviously enjoy that style of racing. I think it's the same people that love super speedways and love seeing everybody wreck every 5 laps. But if you're a true fan of racing, if you're a purist and you really like racing, then that's not it. And I hope that was the last time we see Bristol dirt ever. I don't want to see it ever again. I'm sick of it. I think all the drivers are sick of it. I think if you ask Christopher Bell, I think he would say, I'm glad I won the race, but let's go back to the pavement next year. And one last thing about the Preece thing too. I think it was funny. You brought this up. You texted me during the race, like when it was happening. Tony Stewart owns Ryan Preece's car, and Tony Stewart is backing up Larson the entire way in the incident. Just it's obvious. I mean, when you got the team owner on TV, and I don't mean to try and say that to put Tony in a bad position because I love Tony being on TV, but it's like that dynamic where it's like he owns that team and he is speaking. He is being unbiased. I appreciate that, and he even sees that Priest is just in the wrong completely. Um, Pretty funny stuff.
Yeah, I don't know what way to go with that. I mean, I don't know if he's saying it because, he's the car owner, he pays for the car, and he doesn't wanna get a penalty. Because I mean, you could hear him on the radio just saying he wants to junk Larson, or we all know Tony loves Larson. I mean, he wanted him to come to Stewart Haas, but Ford wouldn't allow it, and Tony Stewart always speaks really highly of him, saying he's one of the best drivers he's ever seen, and he just really loves Larson. So, but yeah, I thought that was really funny. He just completely took Larson's side on all that, but I mean, we knew Tony to be a little hot-headed back in his racing days, but yeah, it was pretty crazy to me. It was pretty funny.
Absolutely. So the last thing I wanted to go back for a second just to the format and like the whole strategy aspect of the race because there was that debate on Kyle taking like not taking the tires or taking the tires on the final stop. Personally, I don't think it matters that he didn't take the tires. Because obviously we saw like Bell and 8 other guys stay out on old tires, and Bell ultimately won the race on 175 lap old tires. So the question of whether he should have took new tires, I think that's silly. I don't think that there would be any advantage to taking the new tires, but I think it was a bad call to come down pit road and take fuel because if anybody's watched these races, I mean, anybody that's watched them the past 2 years knows it's going to be a caution fest. The entire last stage is just going to be caution after caution. The guys were going to have enough time to save fuel. They were going to be able to make it to the end, and that's what Bell did. I mean, I think Larson could have easily stayed out on that last set of that last stage break and won the race just by staying out there because the tires really did not make a difference. Reddick stayed out on the old tires after the first stage and stayed up front the whole second stage pretty much on those old tires as well. So I don't think that's the reason Kyle spun. I think that had nothing to do with that, but just in general, the format just feels weird to me. I don't know about you, Dylan, but it feels weird. The fact that we have non-competitive pit stops where not the entire field is not required to pit. I think if we hopefully we never go back to Bristol Dirt, but if we do, let's do everybody is required to pit at the end of stage one, everybody's required to pit at the end of stage two, and then there's none of this weird fuel strategy on a race where you can't even pit under green.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, tires just weren't even an option. I mean, the surface isn't abrasive, it's dirt. The tires really aren't taking too much wear, and I don't know if the people were saying that just weren't familiar with dirt. I mean, I saw a lot of funny comments. Like I saw one I sent to you earlier. The guy was like, he was asking why the asphalt was showing through the dirt. It was just the rubber laid down on the track, and it's like what 2 feet of dirt laid down. But I don't know if it's just people not familiar with dirt. I don't know what the reason was by him spinning out. I mean, he just could have got on the throttle a little too hard. It was a bad spot in the track. Who knows? But it sucks at the end of his day, and he was running pretty good. But yeah, I'm not sure why they didn't just stay out. They would have been in the lead, and it was just steady cruising. I mean, like we just talked about, whoever was in the lead, they kind of just stay
Nobody
in the
could
lead
pass
the
him.
whole yeah, no one could pass. I mean, there was huge jumps on every restart. In stage 1, when Larson led every lap, I mean, he was just immediately halfway through turn 1 and turn 2, I mean, he was already like 2, 3 car lengths ahead of 2nd place, so, there was just really, really no question whether or not people could make it back up. There was only a few guys that did pit, with Larson. I think it was, like, Dillon and Bush, but I believe they took tires, but they eventually made their way up, but it took majority of the race to finally get up there, but who's to say? I mean, if he didn't spin out, who's to say he didn't have a chance? But a lot of dirt guys ended up doing pretty well yesterday. Stenhouse got a good finish. Bell obviously won the race. Reddick kind of run him down there at the end. But you know, ultimately, I just don't. I hope we don't see Bristol dirt ever again. I mean, I think the drivers have all said it. I mean, Bristol's one of the best tracks on the circuit, and to just take it up from the schedule 2 times, it's just not necessary. And if they really want to stay with dirt for the cup side of things, you know, said it before, go to an actual dirt track where it's prepped properly and not just throwing it on the asphalt surface, concrete surface, whatever. But I think it's decent for the trucks. I think the trucks put on an okay race. I think that's a cool thing that they NASCAR could do is keep the trucks going like they used to do at Eldora. But yeah, man, I don't know what the next stage is. It's kind of a novelty, like Davenport said in his post game interview or his post race interview. It's kind of a novelty. It's not really I don't know, serious deal per
Yeah.
se in terms of dirt racing. So, I mean, who knows? That's just my take. I know a lot of people did enjoy it, but it wasn't my cup of tea.
Right. And that's and we come on here and talk about this, and it's not to crap on the race or crap on the people that it did enjoy it. If you did enjoy it, awesome. Like that's I think we want people to enjoy the sport and consume the sport as a whole, but I think it's like it's frustrating coming from like a dirt background to watch that for me. Like for me personally, from my perspective, coming from a dirt background, it's like it's just not exciting to me. And I think for those fans that really did enjoy it, if it was their first time watching anything on dirt, go watch on Tuesday Lakeside. Tomorrow Lakeside. Get a Flow subscription. Watch that because if you thought that that was good on Sunday, then watch a 410 sprint car race. Go watch the next World of Outlaws late model or Lucas Oil late model race. I mean, there is so much more out there, so much better dirt racing out there, and it just the NASCAR stuff doesn't compare to it, and I think that's where we kind of see where we kind of come to our conclusion that we don't want to see it anymore, and I think that's where the drivers come to that conclusion as well.
Yeah, I mean, they're just not made for it. Like I said earlier, I mean, they're so much heavier than dirt cars. The aerodynamics. I mean, you have guys at the pit stops. They got like homemade Swiffer sweepers wiping their windshields off. They shouldn't even have a windshield. I just don't think they're just not set up to run the dirt. And I hope they don't do it again. I think the previous years they announced the next year during the race. I
Yeah.
think so, but so they said they don't have any plans as of right now. So maybe that's a sign of not seeing it, but. I mean, who knows that they're trying to do all new things. You got the Clash, you got Bristol Dirt, the Chicago Street Race coming up this year. So I like the effort to create these new events and bring in more people, make it more exciting. But I think after 3 years of having Bristol Dirt, it's kind of time to move on. Um, and maybe explore other avenues. Just change the schedule around a little bit and see some different racetracks.
Right, like okay, and like speaking on the fact of like doing some like different things, like some exciting new things, like we see like the All-Star race at North Wilkesboro. Like I think everybody can agree like that is an awesome deal, and I think even if it doesn't put on like the best race, like it's awesome, like it's cool, it's historic, like it's good for the sport because it's nostalgic. Like old fans are gonna people that stopped watching NASCAR are gonna probably like tune in and want to see like, oh wow, North Wilkesboro, like whatever, like that kind of stuff. I think is what they should be focusing on more so than the one-off weird events like Bristol Dirt and the Clash, and maybe I'm not gonna knock Chicago before it even happens, but we'll see. I think the new TV deal coming up for NASCAR is gonna play a big role into what we see happen with the schedules and stuff like that in years to come. But definitely definitely looking forward to Tuesday now. We're all eyes on tomorrow, Tuesday, the high limit sprint car series at Lakeside. Uh Dylan, I saw earlier 56 cars expected at that race. Big time. I don't think anybody kind of thought there's going to be that many cars at the first race, but we'll probably be watching C mains, D mains, non-qualifiers, all that good stuff tomorrow night.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a stout field. It's going to be a big one. There's a ton of guys in here, a lot of World of Outlaw guys. I mean, you got Sheldon Hansfield, Macedo, Donnie Schatz, your normal guys, David Gravel, Logan Schuart. All these guys are, competing. Then we got a lot of guys that are, full time, like Anthony Macri, Danny Dietrich, Bowman, Larson, obviously, Justin Peck. I mean, just a lot of guys that are very talented running this event. And I'm curious to see which events the World of Outlaw guys are going to run because they have what like 4 or 5 races to choose from with the thing with World of Outlaw. So I don't know if it's going to depend on the World of Outlaw schedule and where they're at, or if they're picking and choosing their favorite tracks, what they want to run. Picking based on payout. I'm not sure, but it's definitely going to be exciting and seeing the best of the best go at it. We see a lot of normal races we don't get all these top superstar guys just jumping in the field and running. It's kind of off balance sometimes, but in this case, it's definitely very competitive. You have the best of the best competing, so it's definitely going to be a really cool event, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, definitely like one of the biggest fields we're gonna see like all year in sprint car racing. I feel like, we're talking about like numbers that we would see at like races like the Knoxville Nationals or the Kings Royal or big events like that where I mean High Limit's doing a lot of good things, and like to your point, it'll be interesting to see how many outlaw guys are going. I mean, obviously we kind of have like a preliminary list of who's going to be there tomorrow night already released, but this is a 50,000 to win, one of the two. So the other 50,000 to win is at Lernerville later in the year, I think in September. I think those two are going to be like the big ones that all the outlaw guys go to. But they have 4 races, and which would still keep them eligible for bonus money with the World of Outlaws, and then if they run, I think it's up to 8 races, they can still be eligible for the points championship, just not receiving any bonus money from World of Outlaws. So, um, going to be interesting to see how that all plays out, but love the car count for tomorrow night, and it's going to be exciting to see. I think it's going to be interesting to see how Kyle Larson does. I mean, we haven't seen him in a sprint car in a long time. It's been a while, and I don't know who's your pick to win, Dylan. I mean, the 57 has struggled on qualifying on the half mile tracks like this. I mean, we were we witnessed it at Williams Grove last year. The half miles are tough for the 57 in qualifying. So, do you bet against the 57 and pick somebody else?
I mean, I'm obviously gonna pick for Larson, but I gotta give my pick if it's not Larson. Another guy that's been absolutely on fire this year, my boy Rico. He's just been lighting up in World of Outlaws. He's been doing really good, and actually some interesting stuff that came out. It was a week or two ago that Rico and Larson, they have the same chassis manufacturer, and they're going out of business or something. So I'm not really sure what's to come with that. They run the same chassis, so I know Rico didn't seem too ecstatic about it on Twitter. He said, we're effed, so it's I don't know what they're gonna do with that, but yeah, my pick is Rico. He's just been on fire this year, and yeah, I mean it's a stout field, like I said. There's just so much competition. It's hard to pick, but yeah, that's my pick.
Yeah, I'm going with Kyle Larson. I think he's gonna win if he can qualify good. It's all gonna come down to qualifying. If he gets a good draw in qualifying, I think the 57 will be out front. But that's been the Achilles heel of the Paul Silva owned 57. So we'll see. That's on Flow Racing tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. Make sure you tune in and support the series. I know we're really looking forward to it, and we'll have a ton of coverage on Larsonland, all of our social medias. So if you cannot watch on Flow, stay up to date with all things Kyle Larson on our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Might even put something on TikTok. You never know. But Dylan, I think that pretty much wraps up today's show. Unless you had anything else.
That should pretty much wrap it up. Hopefully, we look good here in the coming weeks, and we can put Bristol behind us. Everyone was up with Richmond in the late model, so I hope we kind of stay on that upwards trend and have a good rest of the year. April, some good tracks to Larson, so some good tracks that he runs good at. Dover at the end of the month, that's one of his best tracks. You'll be going to that. So yeah, I mean, just hopefully good rest of the year, and we can keep the momentum going.
Absolutely. So that's pretty much wrap up today's show. We'll be back again next week to recap the NASCAR Cup Series race from Martinsville, as well as the High Limit Sprint Car Series race at Lakeside. If you're watching on YouTube, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please follow our podcast so you never miss a thing. Have a great rest of the week, everyone, and enjoy the on-track action over the next 7 days. We will see you in the next episode.